My name is Linda Locke. I live in Seaford, and I've been married to him for 39 years. Next year will be the big 4-0.
I'm Ron Locke, and I live in Seaford as well. I've been married to her for 39 years, like she says. We have 3 children, 5 grandkids, and love the Lord. Met in college. We actually took a Black History class together.
Yes.
So he would have us take field trips. So this particular Sunday, we were going to a Muslim mosque
Yeah.
to have the experience of attending a Muslim religious service. We lived in the same quadrant of Washington, D.C. We're both from Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us lived in Southeast D.C. The teacher said, well, does anybody need a ride? She needed a ride, and I had my dad's car. Picked her up that Sunday, and we went to the mosque, and afterwards we had our first date. We went to McDonald's.
Yes, he took me to McDonald's.
And I spent. I paid for the food.
We had dated and did things we weren't supposed to do, which produced my son. I just knew we were together, and we never talked about getting married or anything. And it was Christmas Eve, I think it was. I messed it up. He wanted to do this big romantic thing, I think.
It's Christmas Day.
And and I had been out all day with my son, and it was dark, and it was nighttime, and he called and wanted me to come over, and I was like, no, I can't. I just got in, and he was like, oh, you just come over, and so I go, no, and he's like, he just kept saying, I go, why? Why do I have to come over? And he was like, well, I was going to ask you to marry me, but because...
First fight.
So he was mad, and he hung up the phone. And I freaked out. I called my mom. I don't know if he even knew. I called my mom, and I was like, I messed up. He was going to ask me to marry him, and now he's not going to do it. And she was like, if he bought the ring, he's going to do it, right? So I think he came the next day with his mom and his sister. We were planning a wedding and everything, and
It's supposed to have been that May of '82.
Right, and he got a job up in Rochester, New York, at Kodak, and he had to go. Me and my mom was just starting to really plan. You were making the guest list and everything. I had bought my dress, and he told me he had to basically go, and so I had 2 choices. Either I let him go and he come back to get married, or we get married and we all go as a family. And so I figured, if I let him go, he may not come back. So I got married and went with him. And it was nice. It was, we were, it's the honeymoon phase. And I think we weren't even married a year.
Yes, less than a year.
Yeah, less than a year. And we did not get along. We got in arguments all the time, and I had planned to leave. So when he went to work, I knew I had 8 hours to pack up and go. And that's what I did. And so when he came home, we were back down in D.C. I went back to work, and I met this woman who would come in every Monday and talk about her Sunday service and how good the pastor was and everything. And so I sat there for probably a week, and I went to her and I go, what church do you go to? And she told me, and she invited me to the church. And I started going regularly. And I got excited, because I got the word and it was so exciting. I went home, told my mom, and then I decided one day to go up and accept the Lord. And I didn't really know what he was doing. I contacted him and said, what I had did, what I'd done. And I think he told me that he had did the same thing.
I was sitting in the break room one day, eating lunch, and a brother named Phil. Phil saw me in the break room, and Phil said, "Hey, Ronnie, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just sitting here eating." He said, "Well, why don't you come on upstairs? There's a bunch of fellas. We get together and we have lunch together." And he didn't tell me that it was a Bible study. So I walk into this room and all I see are tattoos, beards, and Bibles. It was infectious because you found out that these guys who you would have probably placed the furthest from being Christians, you find out that they were bona fide Christians. So you're sitting there and you're listening to this Bible study and you're learning stuff about the Bible. You're learning about Jesus Christ. And it was one of those situations where it challenged me to the point where I gave my life to the Lord. And after I gave my life to the Lord, it was just amazing how quickly the desire was to get away from where we were, quote unquote, fellowshipping. So both of us ended up giving our lives to the Lord while we were apart. And that made it easier for us to get back together.
Yeah. And I always joke that, the Lord just looked at us and was like, I got to separate them before I can reach them.
But actually, what's funny?
And it was basically around the same time. It was like, hey, this is what's going on. He was like, yeah, me too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, So yeah.
But I don't know about for her, but I know for me, one of the best things that could have happened to me was moving away from DC, because that was born and raised. All my homies in DC, all of my bad influence was in DC. All of the people that I influenced negatively was DC.
But that's one of the things that I always tell like young married couples. I always advise them. I know you want to be around your friends and your family and stuff like that. But for us, I feel that a lot of times if you can just move just a little bit away, it gives you that time to really get to know each other. Because my mom sat me down and told me, she was like, you can't run home every time you have an argument, every time something goes wrong. And that just stuck with me, and so I knew we had to come back and we had to figure out how to get along, and we did. I mean, we went through some stuff. He lost his job at Kodak and we had to figure it out how to make things work, and I wasn't working. And then we got a job back down here. But I think by that time we were strong enough. God knew that we were strong enough to bring us back down. Marriage isn't easy because you got two different personalities that you're trying to bound together, and it can be pretty rough. We had our kids. We brought our kids up in the Lord. They went to Christian school, Christian college. And we just wanted to stay on that path. We were invited to a wedding here in Delaware. And when we came, we stayed for a couple of days more. He never brought up retirement until we came to Delaware. And then then we just started thinking about it. We started looking at where to live and stuff like that.
Ironically, the first church that I found in Delaware was Eagle's Nest on the internet. And it's the only church that I actually looked at the messages or looked at the videos of, and that was Eagle's Nest. Mm-hmm. So our first time coming here, we would come up on holidays. So our first Sunday attending a service here, I told Pastor Bob, we were actually able to meet with Pastor Bob that Sunday. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, yeah, we live in Maryland. And I said, I don't know when we're coming to Delaware to live, but I said, when we do come to Delaware, this will be our church. So it's one of those things where there were a few Sundays after that he would see us, and he said, "Have you moved to Delaware yet?" And we were still coming up from Maryland, coming up here from Maryland, spending the weekend. It's like, no, we haven't moved yet.
Yeah, so we basically looked at videos online about the church and everything. And the very first time, like he said, that we came here, you know, they mentioned Starting Point, and and it was like, yeah, we have time, we could do that, and so we basically joined the church before we moved to Delaware. And so when we came, we knew, different people and everything, and so it was really easy to transition, once we got here.
Well, there's a certain lady named Linda that told everybody that I played the drums. I wanted to wait until I officially retired to basically join the music ministry. And what's funny is one night, because we used to come Saturday night, and one Saturday night I was sitting out in the auditorium, and your dad was on bass, scheduled to play bass that night. Caleb was going to play guitar that night. I don't know who's on keyboards, but whoever was supposed to play the drums didn't show up. And your dad was going to play the drums, but if your dad played the drums, then he wasn't going to be playing the bass. So Caleb said, "Hey, Ron, you mind playing the drums?" And I had no idea what I was going to be playing because I never practiced. So that was the first night, and it was one of those things where I didn't play again until I was able, after I retired, I was able to do the practice or whatever. But that was my maiden voyage, more or less. I guess the bottom line is that you basically just want to find yourself as being a conduit and being accessible to God and being available for God to use you in whatever manner. Whatever gifts you have, God put them there, and God put them there for His glory. He didn't put the gift in you for you to hide it, and for you to keep it, or for you to squander it and use it for your glory. It's for His glory. So being able to minister through whatever God has put in me, being able to minister her, being able to minister what God has put in her. I think it's just a matter of being a part of the puzzle, where God knows exactly what He wants, and you're just a part of that, which is a privilege, but it's also a calling. It's actually receiving direction from God and just doing what God wants you to do.